The sound of shattering glass tore through the quiet afternoon like a gunshot, and Nora Kensington felt her heart drop into her stomach before she even turned toward the cabin at the edge of their property. Her 7-year-old son Tommy stood paralyzed in the dirt yard, his face drained of color, staring at the broken window of the small dwelling where Isaac Morgan lived. The baseball Tommy had been throwing against the side of their barn now lay somewhere inside that cabin, and Nora knew without asking what had happened. "Mama," Tommy whispered, his voice cracking with fear. "Stay here," Nora said, already moving toward the cabin. Her hands smoothed down her apron more from habit than any real concern for her appearance. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Isaac Morgan was not a man anyone in Leadville, Colorado, knew well. He kept to himself, worked odd jobs around the mining district, and spoke only when necessary. Some said he was dangerous. Others said he was simply broken. Either way, Nora had never exchanged more than a polite nod with the man in the 2 years since her husband Henry had died in a mine collapse, and she had moved to this small plot of land on the outskirts of town. Before she could reach the cabin door, it opened. Isaac Morgan stepped out onto the narrow porch, and Nora stopped in her tracks. He was tall, lean in the way men got when they forgot to eat regularly, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of slate. He held Tommy's baseball in one hand. His expression was unreadable. "Mr. Morgan," Nora began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am so sorry. My son did not mean to. Where is the boy?" Isaac's voice was quiet, rough from disuse. Nora turned and gestured toward Tommy, who had taken several steps forward despite her instructions. The child looked ready to bolt at any moment. "Come here," Isaac said. Tommy glanced at his mother. Nora nodded, though her throat felt tight. The boy walked forward slowly, each step reluctant, until he stood at the base of the porch steps. Isaac looked down at him for a long moment, turning the baseball over in his hands. The leather was scuffed and worn, clearly well used. "You throw this." "Yes, sir," Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Against your barn." "Yes, sir." Isaac was quiet for another moment. Then he said, "Your grip is wrong. That is why it got away from you." Nora blinked in surprise. Tommy's eyes widened. "Sir?" the boy asked. "Your grip," Isaac repeated. He held up the ball, demonstrating. "You are holding it in your palm. Ball needs to sit in your fingers. Control comes from the fingertips, not the whole hand." Tommy stared at him, clearly not understanding what was happening. Neither did Nora. "I will fix my window," Isaac continued. "You will come back tomorrow after school. I will show you how to throw properly so this does not happen again." "You do not have to do that," Nora said quickly. "I can pay for the window, and Tommy can help with repairs or whatever else you need." Isaac's eyes shifted to her, and for just a moment she saw something flicker in them. Pain, maybe, or loneliness. "I do not need payment. Boy needs to learn to throw." "Mr. Morgan, tomorrow," Isaac said firmly, "after school." He handed the baseball to Tommy, who took it with shaking hands. Then Isaac turned and went back inside his cabin, closing the door behind him. Nora and Tommy stood in silence for several seconds. Finally, Tommy looked up at her. "Am I in trouble?" Nora let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Yes. But perhaps not as much as I thought you would be." That evening, after Tommy had gone to bed, Nora sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea and tried to make sense of what had happened. Isaac Morgan had every right to be furious. A broken window was no small thing, especially as autumn began to creep into the Colorado mountains and the nights grew cold. Glass was expensive. Instead, he had offered to teach her son to throw a baseball. She thought about the way he had looked at Tommy. Not with anger, but with something else. Something that made her chest ache in a way she could not quite name. The next afternoon, Nora watched from her kitchen window as Tommy walked nervously across the yard toward Isaac's cabin. She told herself she was not spying. She was simply being careful, protective. A widow with a young son had to be cautious. Isaac was already outside, waiting. He had a leather glove in his hand, clearly handmade. The stitching was neat and precise. He handed it to Tommy, who slipped it onto his left hand with obvious excitement. Nora could not hear what they were saying, but she watched as Isaac demonstrated a throwing motion, his body moving with a fluid grace she had not expected. Tommy tried to copy him, his small frame awkward and uncoordinated. Isaac adjusted the boy's arm, his movements patient and careful. They threw the ball back and forth for nearly an hour, and Nora found herself unable to look away when Tommy finally came home. His face was flushed with exertion, and his eyes bright with something she had not seen in a long time. Joy. "Mama, look what Mr. Morgan made for me." He held up the glove. "He said I could keep it. He said I have a good arm, I just needed to learn how to use it properly." Nora examined the glove. The leather was soft and well worked, the stitching strong. It must have taken hours to make. This is very generous of him. "He said I should come back tomorrow," Tommy said. "He said he would teach me how to catch." "Tommy, Mr. Morgan is a busy man. You cannot expect," he said, "to come back," Tommy insisted. "He said so." Nora looked toward the cabin, but Isaac had already gone inside. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, something she had not felt since before Henry died. Curiosity, maybe, or something more complicated than that. The lessons continued. Every afternoon after school, Tommy would run across the yard to Isaac's cabin, and the two of them would spend an hour or more throwing the ball back and forth. Nora tried not to watch, but she found herself drawn to the window again and again. She noticed things. The way Isaac's expression softened when he looked at Tommy. The way he never raised his voice, even when the boy made mistakes. The way he sometimes stood very still, staring at nothing as if he had forgotten where he was. One afternoon in late September, nearly 3 weeks after the broken window, Nora was hanging laundry when she heard Tommy laughing. The sound was so pure and unguarded that it stopped her in her tracks. She looked over to see Isaac chasing Tommy around the yard, the baseball clutched in the boy's hands as he shrieked with delight. When Isaac finally caught him, he scooped Tommy up and swung him around once before setting him back on his feet, both of them breathing hard and grinning. Then Isaac seemed to realize what he had done. His smile faded. He stepped back from Tommy, his expression closing off like a door slamming shut. He said something Nora could not hear, then turned and walked back to his cabin without another word. Tommy stood in the yard, looking confused and hurt. Nora finished hanging the sheet she was holding, then walked over to her son. "What happened?" "I do not know," Tommy said, his voice small. "We were just playing, then he got sad and left." Nora looked toward the cabin. The door was closed. "Come inside, I will make supper." But that evening, after Tommy was in bed, Nora found herself standing on Isaac Morgan's porch, her hand raised to knock. She hesitated. This was none of her business. Whatever had caused that look on his face, whatever pain he carried, it was his own private burden, but he had been kind to her son. More than kind. And she could not shake the image of him standing alone in the yard, looking like a man who had just remembered something terrible. She knocked. There was a long silence. Then footsteps. The door opened. Isaac looked surprised to see her. He had removed his hat and his hair fell across his forehead in a way that made him look younger, vulnerable. "Mrs. Kensington." "I wanted to thank you," Nora said, "for the glove, for the lessons. Tommy has not been this happy since his father died." Isaac's jaw tightened. "It is nothing." "It is not nothing," Nora said firmly. "You have been very generous with your time. I just wanted you to know that it means a great deal, to both of us." He looked at her for a long moment and she saw that flicker again, that deep, aching sadness. I should not have done it. Done what? Any of it, Isaac said. The glove, the lessons, I should have just sent the boy home. Why? Nora asked. He started to close the door, but Nora put her hand on it. Mr. Morgan, please. If Tommy did something wrong, he did nothing wrong, Isaac said, his voice rough. That is the problem. Nora did not understand, but she could see the pain etched into every line of his face. Then what is it? Isaac looked away, his hand still on the door. For a moment she thought he would not answer. Then quietly he said, I had a son once. His name was James. He was 8 years old when the fever took him. That was 5 years ago. Nora felt her breath catch. I am so sorry. My wife could not bear it, Isaac continued, his voice flat. She left a year later, went back east to live with her sister. I came here because I could not stand to be in the house where he died. I thought if I went somewhere new, somewhere with no memories, it would hurt less. He finally looked at her again. It does not. Mr. Morgan. I saw the ball come through the window, and for a moment I was angry, Isaac said. Then I saw your boy standing there, looking terrified, and all I could think was that James used to play baseball. He loved it. I taught him to throw when he was 6. His voice broke slightly. I should have sent Tommy away. Instead, I made him a glove. I have been teaching him the way I taught James. And today, when we were playing, I forgot for just a moment that he was not my son. Then I remembered, and it hurt more than anything has hurt in years. Nora felt tears prick her eyes. I am so sorry. I will keep Tommy away. I did not know. No, Isaac said sharply. Then more gently, no, that is not what I want. I just do not know if I can bear it. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Nora said, My husband died 2 years ago. Mine collapse. He was a good man. A good father. I thought I would never recover from losing him. Some days I still do not think I have. She met Isaac's eyes. But Tommy needs to keep living. He needs to laugh and play and learn. He needs to be a child. And if I kept him locked away to protect myself from more pain, I would be doing him a terrible disservice. Isaac's expression softened slightly. You have given my son something I could not, Nora continued. You have given him a piece of his childhood back. If it causes you pain, I understand. But I think perhaps it is also helping you heal, even if it does not feel that way right now. Isaac was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, he can keep coming if he wants to. He wants to, Nora said softly. Very much. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding. A recognition of shared grief and the tentative hope of moving forward. Thank you, Nora said. Isaac nodded. Then, after a pause, he said, You can call me Isaac. Mr. Morgan makes me feel old. Nora smiled despite herself. Then you should call me Nora. Nora, he repeated as if testing the name. He almost smiled. Good night, then. Good night, Isaac. She walked back across the yard to her own house, and for the first time in 2 years she felt something other than grief and exhaustion. She felt hope. The lessons continued, and slowly, something began to shift. Isaac started joining them for supper once a week, always on Fridays. He was awkward at first, unused to conversation and domestic life. But Tommy chattered enough for all of them, talking about school and baseball and the latest town gossip he had overheard. Isaac listened, occasionally asking questions, and Nora watched the way he began to relax, the hard edges of his grief softening bit by bit. One evening in October, after Tommy had gone to bed, Isaac helped Nora wash the dishes. It was a simple domestic task, but there was an intimacy to it that made Nora's heart beat faster. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, and then Isaac said, He reminds me of James sometimes. The way he laughs, the way he gets so excited about small things. Nora glanced at him. Does that hurt? Yes, Isaac said honestly, but it also feels good, like James is not as far away as I thought. Nora dried a plate and set it carefully on the shelf. Henry used to say that the people we love never really leave us. They live on in the things they taught us, the ways they shaped us. She paused. I did not believe him when he said it. I thought it was just something people said to make themselves feel better, but I think maybe he was right. Isaac looked at her, really looked at her, and Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. You are a remarkable woman, Nora. I am just trying to survive, she said softly. That is what makes you remarkable, Isaac replied. The air between them felt charged, and Nora found herself unable to look away from him. She saw the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the way his expression opened in a way it never did around anyone else. And she realized with a start that she wanted him to look at her like that. Wanted to be the one who made him smile, who eased his grief, who reminded him that life was still worth living. She had not expected to feel this way about anyone ever again. Isaac seemed to realize the moment had become too intense. He cleared his throat and stepped back. I should go. It is getting late. Of course, Nora said, trying to keep the disappointment out of her voice, but as he walked toward the door, he paused and looked back at her. Thank you for supper, and for everything else. You are always welcome here, Isaac, Nora said. His smile was small but genuine. Good night, Nora. After he left, Nora sat at the kitchen table and pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks. She was falling for him, falling hard and fast in a way that terrified her. She had not planned for this, had not wanted it, but there it was, undeniable and overwhelming. Winter came early to Leadville that year. By November, snow blanketed the ground and the baseball lessons had to move indoors. Isaac cleared space in his small cabin, pushing furniture against the walls so Tommy could practice his throwing motion. Nora would watch from her window, seeing the lamplight glow warm against the darkness, and wonder what they were talking about in there. One evening, Tommy came home with frostbitten cheeks and a huge smile. Isaac said, when spring comes, we are going to build a real pitching target. He said I am getting good enough to hit specific spots. That is wonderful, sweetheart, Nora said, helping him out of his coat. Mama, Tommy said, suddenly serious. Do you think Isaac is lonely? The question caught Nora off guard. Why do you ask? Because he lives all by himself, Tommy said. And sometimes when he thinks I am not looking, he gets really sad, like he is thinking about something that hurts. Nora knelt down so she was at eye level with her son. I think Isaac has been through some very difficult things. But I also think you make him very happy. I wish he could live with us, Tommy said. Then he would not be lonely anymore. Nora's heart clenched. It is more complicated than that, Tommy. Why? Because I am afraid, Nora thought. Because I do not know if I am ready. Because the thought of opening my heart again terrifies me. But she could not say any of that to her 7-year-old son. So instead, she said, sometimes grown-up things are just complicated. But I promise you, Isaac knows we care about him. Tommy seemed satisfied with that answer, but Nora lay awake that night thinking about it. She did care about Isaac, more than cared. She found herself looking for excuses to see him, to talk to him. She noticed everything about him. The way he rolled up his sleeves when he worked. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The way he was always so careful and gentle with Tommy, as if the boy were something precious. She thought about the way he had looked at her that night in the kitchen, and her whole body grew warm. In December, a blizzard swept through Leadville, dumping 3 feet of snow and trapping everyone indoors for nearly a week. Nora spent the time keeping the fire going and trying to keep Tommy entertained. On the 3rd day, there was a knock at the door. It was Isaac, covered in snow, carrying an armload of firewood. Wanted to make sure you had enough, he said simply. Nora stared at him. You walked through the blizzard to bring us firewood. Your shed is nearly empty, Isaac said. I have plenty. Isaac, you could have frozen to death." "I am fine," he said, stomping snow off his boots. "Where should I put this?" Nora directed him to the box by the fireplace, her mind spinning. He had risked his safety to make sure she and Tommy stayed warm. The gesture was so thoughtful, so caring that it made her throat tight. "Thank you," she said when he had finished stacking the wood. "Truly, this means a great deal." Isaac shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the gratitude. "You would do the same for me." "Stay," Nora said impulsively. "At least until the storm lets up a bit. I will make coffee." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." They sat at the kitchen table while Tommy played on the floor with some carved wooden animals Henry had made years ago. Nora poured coffee and they talked about small things. The weather, the town, how Tommy was doing with his studies. But underneath the mundane conversation, Nora felt the pull between them growing stronger. She caught Isaac looking at her when he thought she was not paying attention, saw the way his expression softened, the way he seemed more at ease in her home than he ever did in his own cabin. "Isaac," Nora said quietly so Tommy would not hear, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about the future?" She kept her eyes on her coffee cup. "About what comes next?" There was a long pause. Then Isaac said, "I used to not think about it at all. I just moved from one day to the next, trying not to remember the past. But lately, yes, I have been thinking about it." Nora looked up at him. "And what do you think?" His gray eyes held hers. "I think I am tired of being alone. I think I am tired of living in the past. And I think you and Tommy have reminded me what it feels like to be part of something, to belong somewhere." Nora's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Isaac, I am not saying this to make you uncomfortable," Isaac said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. You have given me something I did not think I would ever have again. Hope." Tears pricked Nora's eyes. "You have given us something too. You have given Tommy a mentor and a friend, and you have given me." She trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "What?" Isaac asked softly. "A reason to think about the future too," Nora said. The look that passed between them was electric. Isaac reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. They sat like that for a long moment, just holding hands, and Nora felt something settle deep in her chest. This was right. This man, this connection, this quiet, steady affection growing between them. It was not the wild, passionate love she had shared with Henry. It was something different, something deeper and more mature, born of shared grief and hard-won hope. The storm passed, and life returned to normal, but something had shifted between them. Isaac came for supper twice a week now and then 3 times. He helped with repairs around Nora's property. He taught Tommy to whittle. He fixed the broken step on the porch that Nora had been meaning to get to for months. He became part of their lives in a way that felt natural and inevitable. The town noticed, of course. Leadville was small, and gossip spread quickly. Nora heard the whispers at the general store, saw the looks from other women at church. Some were disapproving, others were envious. But Nora found she did not care as much as she thought she would. Let them talk. She knew what she felt. She knew Isaac was a good man. That was all that mattered. One Sunday in January after church, Mary Henderson cornered Nora outside. Mary was the wife of one of the mine supervisors, and she considered herself the arbiter of proper behavior in Leadville. "Nora, dear," Mary said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I simply must speak with you about this situation with Mr. Morgan." "What situation?" Nora asked, keeping her voice level. "Well, the man is at your house constantly," Mary said. "People are beginning to talk. It is simply not proper for a widow to have a single man spending so much time in her home. You must think of your reputation. And Tommy's." Nora felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept her expression calm. Isaac has been teaching my son valuable skills and providing him with much-needed guidance. I see nothing improper about that. But surely you can see how it looks, Mary pressed. A young widow and an unmarried man spending so much time together. People will assume whatever they want to assume, Nora interrupted. I cannot control that, and frankly, I do not wish to try. Isaac has been nothing but respectful and kind. If others choose to see something untoward in that, the fault lies with them, not with us. Mary's eyes widened. Well, I was simply trying to help. I appreciate your concern, Nora said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Now if you will excuse me, I need to get Tommy home. She walked away before Mary could respond, her hands shaking slightly with suppressed emotion. She hated confrontation, hated being the subject of gossip, but she hated the idea of giving up what she had with Isaac even more. That evening she told Isaac about the conversation. They were sitting on her porch while Tommy played in the yard, and she watched his face carefully as she spoke. When she finished, Isaac was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If this is causing you problems, I can stay away. I do not want to damage your reputation." "No," Nora said firmly. "I do not want you to stay away, I want you here." Isaac looked at her and she saw hope and fear warring in his expression. "Nora, I need to tell you something. I need to be honest with you." "All right." He took a breath. "When I first started teaching Tommy, it was because I saw a chance to do something good. To maybe make up for the fact that I could not save my own son. But it became more than that. Spending time with him, with you, it reminded me what it felt like to be alive, to care about something other than getting through the day." He paused. "And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." Nora's breath caught. She had hoped, but hearing him say it aloud made it real in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I know it might be too soon," Isaac continued. "I know you might not feel the same way, but I needed you to know. Because if people are going to talk anyway, they might as well have a reason." Nora felt tears slip down her cheeks. "It is not too soon, and I do feel the same way. I have been falling in love with you for months. I was just too afraid to admit it." Isaac's expression transformed. Relief and joy flooded his features, making him look years younger. "You mean that?" "Yes," Nora said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I mean it." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "I do not want to replace Henry. I know I could never do that, and Tommy will never replace James. But I think maybe we can build something new, something that honors what we had before while still moving forward." "I think so too," Nora whispered. Isaac leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Nora did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet and full of promise. A beginning rather than an ending. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. Tommy called from the yard and they turned to see him waving at them. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Talking," Nora called back, her cheeks flushing. "Can Isaac stay for supper?" Nora looked at Isaac, who was still holding her hand. "Can you?" "I would like that very much," Isaac said. That night after supper, Isaac sat Tommy down and spoke to him seriously. "Tommy, I want to ask you something important." Tommy's eyes went wide. "What?" "How would you feel if I spent even more time here, if I became a permanent part of your family?" Tommy looked between Isaac and his mother, understanding dawning on his face. "You mean like a father?" "I could never replace your father," Isaac said carefully. "He was a good man and he loved you very much, but I care about you a great deal, and I care about your mother. I would like to be part of your lives if you will have me." Tommy threw his arms around Isaac's neck without hesitation. "Yes. I would like that." Isaac hugged him back, his eyes bright with emotion. Over Tommy's shoulder he met Nora's gaze, and she saw everything she needed to know in his expression. This was real. This was right. This was their second chance. They were married in March, a simple ceremony in the small church with just a few close friends in attendance. Nora wore a blue dress she had made herself, and Isaac wore his best suit, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. Tommy stood beside them, holding the rings, his face split by a huge grin. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her gently, and Nora felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was what healing looked like, not forgetting the past but making room for the future. They decided Isaac would move into Nora's house rather than the other way around. It was bigger, and Tommy was already comfortable there. Isaac brought his few possessions across the yard, and Nora helped him unpack. She found a small wooden box tucked among his clothes, and when she opened it, she found a few precious items. A lock of dark hair tied with a ribbon, a small tin soldier, a photograph of a young boy with Isaac's eyes and his mother's smile. "That is James," Isaac said quietly from the doorway. Nora looked at the photograph for a long moment, studying the boy's face. "He was beautiful, he was," Isaac agreed. "I hope it does not bother you that I keep these things." "Of course not," Nora said. She carefully closed the box and handed it to him. "He was your son. He will always be part of you, and now he is part of our family too." Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Nora pulled him close, holding him while he cried for the first time since she had met him. She cried too for James and for Henry, for all the loss they had both endured. But she also cried with relief and gratitude, because somehow they had found each other in the midst of all that grief, and they had chosen to keep living. Life settled into a new rhythm. Isaac took a steady job at one of the mines, working as a foreman. Nora continued to take in sewing and mending to bring in extra money. Tommy thrived under Isaac's guidance, growing more confident and skilled with each passing month. The three of them became a cohesive unit, a family in every sense of the word. Isaac and Nora talked about whether they wanted more children. It was a delicate subject, fraught with complicated emotions. Part of Nora wanted to give Isaac another chance at fatherhood, a way to heal the wound left by James's death. But another part of her worried that a new baby might feel like an attempt to replace what they had lost. "I do not need more children," Isaac told her one night as they lay in bed. "I have Tommy, and I have you. That is enough for me." "Are you certain?" Nora asked. "Because if you want, I am certain," Isaac said firmly. He pulled her closer. "I spent so long wishing I could go back and change the past, wishing I could save James, keep my wife from leaving, undo all the pain, but I cannot do that. All I can do is be grateful for what I have now. And what I have now is more than I ever thought I would have again." Nora kissed him softly. "I feel the same way." They decided together that their family was complete as it was. Tommy was enough. Their life was enough. And there was something beautiful in that acceptance, in choosing to be content with what they had rather than always reaching for more. Spring came, bringing with it the smell of mud and melting snow and new growth. Isaac built the pitching target he had promised Tommy, setting it up in the yard. He painted a strike zone on a wooden board and mounted it securely. Tommy spent hours every day throwing at it, his accuracy improving dramatically. "He is getting really good," Isaac said to Nora one evening as they watched Tommy practice. "Better than I was at his age." "You have been a wonderful teacher," Nora said. "I hope so," Isaac replied. "I want him to have the childhood James never got to finish. I want him to have everything." "He already has the most important thing," Nora said. "He has someone who believes in him." Isaac smiled and kissed her temple. "We are lucky, are we not?" "We are," Nora agreed. As summer approached, word spread about a baseball game being organized. The mining camps in the area were forming teams, and there would be a tournament of sorts, with matches every weekend. Tommy begged to be allowed to try out for one of the teams, even though he was younger than most of the other boys. "Please," he pleaded. "Isaac has been teaching me all year. I can do it. I know I can." Isaac looked at Nora, leaving the decision to her. She could see the hope in Tommy's eyes, the desperate need to prove himself. "All right," she said finally. "You can try out, but if you do not make the team, you will accept it gracefully. Understood?" "Understood," Tommy shouted, already running off to practice. The tryouts were held on a warm Saturday in May. Nora and Isaac stood on the sidelines with the other parents, watching as the boys ran through various drills. Tommy was one of the smallest there, and Nora felt her heart clench with protective worry. What if he was not good enough? What if the other boys made fun of him? But when it came time for the pitching demonstration, Tommy stepped up to the line with confidence. He wound up the way Isaac had taught him and threw. The ball sailed straight and true, hitting the catcher's mitt with a satisfying smack. He threw 5 more pitches, each one better than the last. The coach, a grizzled old miner named Dutch, nodded approvingly. "That is some arm you have got there, son. Who taught you to throw like that?" "Isaac Morgan, sir," Tommy said proudly, pointing to where Isaac stood. Dutch looked over, his eyebrows rising. "Isaac, I did not know you played baseball." "I do not anymore," Isaac said, "but I used to." "Well, you taught the boy well," Dutch said. "He made the team." Tommy let out a whoop of joy and ran straight to Isaac, who caught him in a hug. "You did it," Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of you." "I could not have done it without you," Tommy said. Nora watched them together, her husband and her son, and felt her heart swell with love. This was what family looked like. This was what healing looked like. The baseball season became the highlight of their summer. Every weekend, there was a game, and the whole town turned out to watch. It was a welcome distraction from the hard, dangerous work of mining, a chance for people to come together and celebrate something joyful. Tommy was the youngest player on his team, but he more than held his own. He pitched in several games, his control and accuracy improving with each outing. Isaac attended every game, sitting on the bench as an unofficial coach, offering advice and encouragement. Nora sat in the stands, often surrounded by other mothers, cheering until her voice was hoarse. "Your boy is something special," one of the women said to her during a particularly exciting game. "And your husband is wonderful with him." "He is," Nora agreed, watching Isaac demonstrate a pitching motion to Tommy between innings. "He really is." By July, Tommy's team had made it to the championship game. The whole town was buzzing with excitement. It would be the biggest event of the summer, and everyone planned to attend. The night before the game, Tommy was too nervous to eat supper. He pushed his food around his plate, his face pale. "What if I mess up?" he said quietly. "What if I let everyone down?" Isaac reached across the table and put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. "Listen to me. You have worked harder than any other boy out there. You have earned your place on that team. Tomorrow you are going to go out there and do your best. That is all anyone can ask. But what if my best is not good enough?" "Then it is not good enough," Isaac said simply. "And that will be all right. Winning is not the only thing that matters. What matters is that you tried, that you did not give up, that you learned and grew and became better than you were before." Tommy looked at him with wide eyes. "Did you learn that from playing baseball?" "I learned it from losing my son," Isaac said quietly. "I spent years thinking I had failed him, that if I had just been a better father, smarter, more careful, somehow I could have saved him. But I could not. And I had to learn that doing your best is all you can do. The outcome is not always in your control." Tommy was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then he said, "Do you think James would be proud of me?" Isaac's expression softened. "I think he would be very proud of you. I know I am." Tommy nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Okay." I will do my best tomorrow." "That is all I ask," Isaac said. The next day dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a baseball game. The field was at the edge of town, a flat stretch of land that had been cleared and leveled specifically for this purpose. By the time the game was set to start, it seemed like the entire population of Leadville had turned out. The stands were packed, and people lined the edges of the field, sitting on blankets or standing in groups. Nora found a seat in the front row, where she would have a perfect view. She was wearing her best dress and hat, and she had packed a basket with lemonade and cookies for after the game. Several of the other miners' wives sat near her, all chattering excitedly. Isaac was on the bench with the team, wearing a serious expression as he talked to Tommy and the other boys. Nora could see how much this meant to him, how invested he had become not just in Tommy's success, but in the success of all the boys. He had found a new purpose here, a way to channel his love for his lost son into something positive and lasting. The game began, and the tension was immediate. Both teams were evenly matched, and the score stayed close throughout. Tommy pitched 3 innings, his face set in concentration as he delivered pitch after pitch with impressive accuracy. When he struck out the opposing team's best hitter, the crowd erupted in cheers. By the final inning, the score was tied. Tommy's team was up to bat with 2 outs and a runner on third. The boy at the plate hit a high fly ball to right field. The outfielder caught it easily, and the inning was over. Now it was Tommy's turn to pitch again, with the game on the line. Nora's heart pounded as Tommy walked to the mound. She could see the tension in his small shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly as he gripped the ball. Isaac called time and walked out to talk to him. Nora could not hear what he said, but she saw the way Tommy nodded, taking a deep breath. When Isaac patted his shoulder and walked back to the bench, Tommy stood a little taller. The first batter stepped up. Tommy wound up and threw, strike 1. The crowd roared. He threw again, strike 2. Nora was gripping the edge of the bench so hard her knuckles were white. The third pitch was perfect. The batter swung and missed. 1 out. The second batter was more patient. He worked the count full before finally hitting a ground ball to the shortstop, who threw him out at first. 2 outs. 1 more out and they would win. The final batter stepped up, a big kid with a reputation for hitting home runs. Nora saw Tommy swallow hard. She could almost feel his fear from where she sat. Tommy threw the first pitch low. Ball 1. The second pitch was outside. Ball 2. Nora heard Isaac shout something from the bench, words of encouragement she could not quite make out. Tommy took his time with the third pitch. He went through his full windup, his form perfect, and released. The ball sailed right down the middle of the plate. The batter swung hard and connected with a loud crack. The ball shot toward left field. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Then the left fielder ran back, and at the last possible second he jumped and caught the ball. The crowd exploded. Tommy's team had won. The boys rushed the field, mobbing the left fielder and then Tommy, everyone shouting and laughing. Nora felt tears streaming down her face as she watched Isaac stride onto the field. Tommy broke away from the pile of boys and ran to him. Isaac swept him up in his arms, spinning him around the way he had that day in the yard months ago. But this time, he did not pull away. This time, he held on tight, both of them laughing. Nora made her way down to the field, pushing through the celebrating crowd. When she reached them, Isaac pulled her in with his free arm, the 3 of them hugging in a tight circle. This was it, Nora thought. This was the moment when everything came together. All the grief and pain and hard work had led them here to this perfect, joyful moment. "You did it," she said to Tommy, kissing his sweaty forehead. "I am so proud of you." "Isaac helped me," Tommy said, his face glowing with happiness. He taught me everything. You did the work, Isaac said. You earned this. The celebration continued long into the evening. There was a picnic supper, with families spreading out blankets and sharing food. Someone brought out a fiddle, and there was dancing. Tommy ran around with the other boys, still high on the excitement of the win. Isaac and Nora sat together on their blanket, watching the festivities. "This is a good day," Isaac said quietly. "It is," Nora agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything," Nora said. "For being brave enough to teach Tommy when you were still hurting, for letting us into your life, for choosing to heal." Isaac was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I did not think I deserved a second chance. I thought I had lost my opportunity for happiness when James died. But you and Tommy showed me that life does not end with loss. It just changes. And sometimes those changes can be beautiful." Nora lifted her head to look at him. "I love you, Isaac Morgan." "I love you too," he said, and kissed her softly. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Nora looked at her family. Tommy was laughing with his teammates, his face dirt-streaked and full of joy. Isaac was watching him with an expression of contentment and pride, and Nora herself felt more at peace than she had in years. They had all been broken by loss. But they had found each other, and together they had built something new. Not a replacement for what they had lost, but something different and equally precious. A family forged in grief, but sustained by love. Tommy ran back over to them, flopping down on the blanket with a happy sigh. "That was the best day ever," he announced. "It certainly was a good one," Isaac agreed, ruffling the boy's hair. "Can we come watch games again next summer?" Tommy asked. "If you keep practicing, maybe you will be playing in them again next summer," Isaac said. "Will you keep teaching me?" "As long as you want to learn," Isaac promised. Tommy grinned and closed his eyes, exhausted but happy. Within minutes he was asleep, his head pillowed on Isaac's leg. "He is out cold," Nora said softly. "Long day," Isaac replied. He looked down at the sleeping boy with such tenderness that Nora felt her throat tighten. "I never thought I would get to do this again. Be a father. Watch a boy grow up and learn and succeed. I thought that part of my life was over." "I am glad it is not," Nora said. "So am I," Isaac said. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "So am I." They sat there as the evening deepened into night, the sounds of celebration fading around them. When the stars came out, Isaac carefully picked up Tommy and carried him to their wagon. The boy did not wake, just snuggled deeper into Isaac's chest with a contented sigh. On the ride home, with Tommy sleeping between them, Nora thought about the path that had brought them here. A thrown baseball, a broken window, a leather glove, and a lesson. Such small things, really. But they had changed everything. Isaac had taken his grief and turned it into something generative, something that helped rather than hurt. He had taught Tommy to throw, but he had also taught him about resilience and hard work and not giving up. He had given the boy a father's love without trying to replace the father he had lost, and in doing so, he had healed himself. Had learned that loving again was not a betrayal of the past, but an affirmation of it. That James's memory could live on in the kindness Isaac showed to another boy, another family. When they got home, Isaac carried Tommy inside and tucked him into bed. Nora kissed her son's forehead, marveling at how much he had grown in the past year. He was taller, stronger, more confident. Still her little boy, but becoming his own person too, she and Isaac stepped out onto the porch, looking up at the stars. The mountains loomed dark against the sky, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "You ever miss the way things were?" Isaac asked. "Before? When it was just you and Tommy?" Nora thought about it carefully. "I miss Henry," she said honestly. "I always will, but I do not miss the loneliness. I do not miss trying to do everything by myself, and I certainly do not miss the woman I was before you came into our lives. Who were you before? Someone just going through the motions, Nora said. Surviving but not really living. You changed that. You reminded me that I still have a life to live, a future to look forward to. Isaac pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She fit perfectly against him, her head tucked under his chin. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, listening to the sounds of the night. I used to think the worst day of my life was the day James died, Isaac said quietly. But now I think maybe the worst days were the ones after, when I chose to stop living, when I locked myself away and decided that grief was all I had left. You did not know any other way to cope, Nora said gently. No, Isaac agreed, but I do now, and that is because of you. You and Tommy showed me that it is possible to honor the past while still embracing the future, to hold on to love without letting it turn into bitterness. We learned it together, Nora said. I could not have done it alone either. They went inside, closing the door on the night. Their home was small but warm, filled with signs of the life they had built together. Tommy's schoolbooks stacked on the table, Isaac's hat hanging by the door, the quilt Nora had made draped over the back of the sofa. Small things, ordinary things, but they added up to something extraordinary. A family, a home, a life worth living. As they got ready for bed, Nora thought about the future. Tommy would keep growing, keep learning. He would have more victories and more losses. But he would always have Isaac to guide him, to teach him, to believe in him. And she would always have Isaac too, this quiet, steady man who had come into her life carrying his own broken pieces and somehow helped her put hers back together. They had not chosen the grief that brought them together, but they had chosen each other, chosen to heal, chosen to love again despite the risk, chosen to build something new from the rubble of what had been lost. And that, Nora thought as she drifted off to sleep in Isaac's arms, was the real victory. Not winning the baseball game, though that had been wonderful, but winning the battle against despair. Choosing hope when it would have been easier to give up. Choosing life when death had taken so much from both of them. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The mountains stood sentinel, ancient and unchanging. And in a small house on the edge of Leadville, Colorado, a family slept peacefully, held together by love and baseball and the quiet miracle of second chances. The years that followed were good ones. Tommy continued to play baseball, his skills improving with each season. Isaac coached the team officially now, beloved by all the boys for his patience and wisdom. Nora's sewing business grew, and she became known throughout the district for her skill. But more than any individual achievement, what mattered was the life they built together. The meals shared around the kitchen table, the evenings spent on the porch watching the sunset, the quiet moments of laughter and conversation and comfort. They were not a perfect family. They had their disagreements and their difficult days. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. On Tommy's 18th birthday, Isaac gave him a gift. It was a new baseball glove made from the finest leather Isaac could afford. But more than that, it was a symbol of all the lessons they had shared, of the bond between them, of the love that had grown from a simple act of kindness on a day when a boy threw a ball through a window, and a grieving man chose compassion over anger. "I could not have asked for a better father," Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion as he examined the glove. "And I could not have asked for a better son," Isaac replied. He pulled the young man into a hug, and Nora watched with tears in her eyes. Her son had grown into a fine young man, strong and kind and capable, with Isaac's steadiness and her determination. He would go on to do good things with his life. She was certain of that. And wherever he went, whatever he did, he would carry with him the lessons Isaac had taught him, not just about baseball but about life, about how to keep going when things were hard, about how to find hope in the midst of grief, about how love could heal even the deepest wounds. That night, after Tommy had gone to bed, Nora and Isaac sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before. They were older now, with gray threading through their hair and lines etched around their eyes, but they were happy, content in a way that only came from a life well lived. "You remember the day Tommy broke your window?" Nora asked. Isaac smiled. "How could I forget? That was the day my life changed." "Mine too," Nora said. She took his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength in his grip. "Thank you for giving him that glove. Thank you for teaching him. Thank you for loving us." "Thank you for letting me," Isaac said. He kissed her softly. "Thank you for giving me a reason to keep living, for showing me that it was possible to be happy again." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear Tommy and his friends laughing, young and carefree. The sound made Isaac smile. "He is going to be all right," Isaac said. "Whatever he chooses to do with his life, he is going to be all right." "I know," Nora said, "because he had you to teach him." "He had both of us," Isaac corrected. "We did this together, and they had. Every step of the way they had faced life together. The joys and the sorrows, the victories and the losses. They had built a family from grief and hope, from broken pieces and second chances. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful, something lasting, something worth every tear and every struggle. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, they finally went inside. But before they did, Isaac paused and looked back at the small cabin across the yard where he used to live. It was empty now, used only for storage, but it would always be a reminder of where he had been, of the darkness he had climbed out of the moment a boy's errant throw had shattered not just a window but the walls he had built around his heart. He had returned that ball with a glove and a lesson, but what he had received in return was so much more: a family, a purpose, a life worth living. And above all, love. The kind of deep, enduring love that comes not from forgetting the past but from learning to carry it forward with grace. Isaac turned away from the cabin and went inside, closing the door behind him. He found Nora in their bedroom, brushing out her hair. She smiled at him in the mirror, and his heart swelled with gratitude. For her, for Tommy, for this life they had made together. "Come to bed," Nora said softly. Isaac did, pulling her close as they settled under the blankets. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines and the stars shone bright and clear. Inside, a man who had lost everything held the woman he loved and knew that he had found his way home. The story that had begun with broken glass and a frightened child had become something far greater. A testament to resilience and redemption. A reminder that love could bloom even in the hardest soil. That second chances were real. That healing was possible. And as Isaac drifted off to sleep, his last thought was a simple one. A prayer of thanks for the day a boy threw a ball through his window. The day his life began again.